Well, welcome to Digging Deeper, Tripping Hazards Edition. We are now past the midpoint of the Tripping Hazards series. Yesterday was all about asking the question, why am I not actually experiencing breakthrough and change in my life after following Jesus? And so I'm joined here with the oldest and youngest staff members here at Rise City Church.
That's right, you got it
Pastor
all.
Mike.
I'm the youngest.
What's the age there, Mike?
70.
70. And the youngin'?
24.
Anthony Hall coming in at 24. I'm right in the middle at 43.
There we go.
So I'm seated appropriately here on the set.
A lot of insight.
Yeah.
A lot of insight.
So I thought it'd be fun today. We actually didn't have any questions get texted in. So evidently I covered the topic thoroughly,
perfectly,
exquisitely, amazingly, all those things. No questions pertaining to actually the talk yesterday. There were a couple that came in to the talk previous, and so we're going to address those on Digging Deeper Live on Sunday, July 2nd. We've actually bumped that back a week to close out the series on the 2nd. But I thought it'd be fun today to just have a conversation about change, life change, this thing that we tout as Christians, say, man, Jesus can change your life. And I thought it'd be fun to listen to Mike. You've had 70 years, and how many years of pastoral experience? Probably 50.
Yeah, close, 45, something like that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So like you've got double the pastoral experience than Anthony's been alive.
Literally. That's crazy.
So you've seen your fair share of change.
Get free lunch out of that or something?
Yeah.
I was like,
fair share of change and then regression. And Anthony, you've had personal life change. You've shared that on this podcast before, and you're working with teenagers who are constantly trying to figure out just who they're going to become. And so let me start this way. Mike, just both reflecting on what you heard yesterday and what we talked about, but also just when you think of life change in the kingdom of God and the expression of Christianity, like what has your experience been personally and pastorally?
Well, I think I go back to when I came to faith when I was 17 years old. It changed my life radically. I was very withdrawn, a loner, very quiet, very withdrawn. And when I met Christ, it changed me completely.
Was it overnight? Was it instantaneous? Like how?
It was within,
I
would say within a 2 or 3 month period. And this was during the Jesus movement. And all that, so there was that kind of thing. But
that's awesome.
But then a lot of growth that came very methodically, and that's kind of what you alluded to yesterday. Growth and change comes a bit at a time.
Were there some particular parts of your life that really drew you to Jesus that you're like, I need this to change, or what was your kind of main drawing factor to Jesus? Yeah,
when I was like maybe 11 years old, the President of the United States was assassinated.
Okay.
His brother was assassinated. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated.
Let's pause right here. Let's just test the youngin'.
That's literally what I read about.
If there was a president and his brother assassinated, who was it?
JFK, Dallas.
Okay, that's right.
And his brother.
Keep going. Sorry, I just want to make sure. Like, way to study some history. Okay,
yes, exactly.
You just happened to catch me.
And so there was race riots in Chicago and Detroit and LA and all this. It was a tumultuous time.
Yeah.
And there was just not that long after the sexual revolution, and there was a lot of drug use, and I'm just a poor little kid, and I needed some answers. I had good parents and good family life. It just was all that social outside stuff. And then it was shortly after that I started working in the church as a youth sponsor and eventually a youth pastor, and I got married, and I needed a lot of Jesus when I got married. Like, you need this, like, it's a big grow up, wake up call. Like, whoa, not only have to manage my life, I have to try to manage her life, and I have to let her manage my life. Which is a lot of, you want to grab the horns of the altar kind of a thing.
So if you were to look at 50 years of following Jesus personally, could you name 2 or 3 years, like these are the most specific ways I know Jesus has changed my life?
I think that when I went from being a youth pastor to an associate pastor, and then eventually to interim pastor, senior pastor, that was a big change, because now I was calling the shots. And my brother-in-law said to me, he goes, it's pretty crazy that you try to hear God for yourself and for all of us, which
no
I'm
pressure.
sure you understand that.
Yeah.
It's like, so that was a, get close to God, closer than I'd been before, because I needed that. I needed that fresh word weekly.
Yeah.
I preached like 45, 50 times a year for like 25 years.
Yeah.
So it was like, you've got to get help.
Yeah.
So it kept you hungry, kept you aggressive.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to come back to the pastoral experience here in a minute, but Anthony,
Yeah.
5 years now? 6?
July 11th, 2017.
Okay, so almost coming up on 6 years.
Yeah, coming up on 6.
Life change in Jesus. I mean, we've heard your story in the previous episode, but just a kind of a quick flyby, like why Jesus and how have you seen him change your life?
Yeah, well, why Jesus? You said something yesterday that I honestly was so, like, it felt so simple and something like I felt like I should have heard before, but I just never heard. But you were talking about people who like use and abuse drugs or go to substance and abuse substances. And you were like, well, the reason you keep going back is because it doesn't sustain you. Like it doesn't last. So it's not working like you think it does because you don't just do it once. And that's kind of my answer to like why Jesus is, I had felt like I hit pretty much every other thing out there that I thought would, bring me life and purpose, and nothing ever did. It all just left me feeling more empty. And so why Jesus was not my plan, but as soon as I went to camp, and I've learned very quick that God had another idea there, and it just in a moment flipped.
Yeah, so your story is one of pretty radical immediacy, right?
Yeah.
Like when you made the decision, like, I mean, it was like, boom, like I talked about more like the lifelong progress, but like yours is one of those like immediate things, right?
Yeah, it was. I mean, and there's definitely like a little bit of tripping hazards that I faced right after, which I'm sure we'll get into. But immediately it was like that. Like I broke down. I remember feeling loved, seen, cared for in like a way that I never have, and honestly for the first time, really. And then I just immediately remember my thoughts changing to where I thought, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I can't keep hanging out with who I'm hanging out with. And then the third thing I thought, which right or wrong, it worked out, but I was like, I got to get out of New Mexico. And
so the environment needed to change.
Yeah, the environment needed to change big time, not just, outside of the people around me. I needed to be in a new place. And so that's actually where I went to college, was the same place I got saved. They offered like an extension site through Southeastern University. So I had no goal at the time to be like, I need to be closer with God, or I want to be a pastor and I want to learn more theology or anything like that. It was literally just get out of New Mexico, and this was the first opportunity that came up. So I was like, I'm going to your free pancake night. I'm registering for your college. Please accept me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how about for you, coming up on 6 years, like 2 or 3 things, what are some of the most specific ways you're like, this is how Jesus changed my life?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, like that, Jesus changed my life. He gave me purpose and gave me a way to view myself in a way that wasn't an outcast, but that I was designed uniquely to impact people in a way that maybe other people aren't. And then probably the biggest thing is when I started to move into a pastoral positions, like you were saying, you had to learn to, have new disciplines that you never had before. And for me, I didn't feel the call to pastor until about maybe 2.5 years into college. And so when that happened, it was kind of like whoa, I need to stop depending on other people for my faith. So Jesus really changed me there, because I realized that my faith early on, a lot of my foundation was all dependent on the people around me, the people that I heard speak, the YouTube videos I could watch. It was never Anthony and the Bible. It was Anthony and other people with their Bible. and I really was just like absorbing what everyone else was getting. And so Jesus changed me through that. And what's funny is I felt like I struggled hearing from God early on. And it's because I was going to what other people heard from God most of, for everything.
Yeah.
And so God really changed me through that, because I learned firsthand that, it does matter, and it does change. Like my relationship with God can go even deeper and further than it has now when I prioritize having time with God and not time with people who spend time with God, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the other one is being as a pastor, Jesus really changed me when he taught me the discipline of leadership through pastoring, and the fact that pastoring is not always easy.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that if you're called to pastor, it was going to be this breeze. Believe it or not, like I was just like, if you're called to that, yeah, literally, and then
that's youthful naivety right there, right? Yeah.
And I learned very quickly that that calling brings some of the most difficult conversations you'll ever have to have with people, and some of the most just tense moments that you're the guy to lead to. There's no looking around like, who's going to take care of this? It's like, oh yeah, that's me now. That's me in this moment.
Yeah. So conversely, maybe more vulnerability, like where have you experienced frustration personally, as far as like, I thought I'd be past this by now, or why am I like still not experiencing breakthrough in this area of my life? And I thought Jesus was going to heal everything, change everything. Like, Mike, I mean, 50 years, like there's got to, right? You got to have some that are just
for sure. I think one of the big ones that sticks out to me is I was an associate. I was down the line and in the same place. Yeah. And I kept having thoughts of, why doesn't the senior pastor do this? And why doesn't he do that? And why can't he clearly see this? And I thought,
that's good.
When I became the senior pastor, I thought, all right, it's all going to go good now. And it didn't. Yeah. It was rough. It was a rough start. For one, I'd been in the church as a youth pastor. Not the highest respect was given to me, particularly. Like,
it happens.
What are you doing here? And how long will you last? So there's that. And then there's individual people that you worked with and you poured a lot of time into, and they did good for a while. And they even had some miraculous things, but they weren't able to hold on to them for what they wouldn't walk it out, so to speak. They wouldn't walk out their healing or their deliverance. And then they went back to stuff that was not good. And it's disappointing. But
have you had anything personally like that? You're just like, gosh, like I just kind of had to like, Paul even has these comments about time praying to remove these thorns in the flesh. And it's like, nope, they're not going anywhere. And like,
I got to get
the notion and the mindset of most people when it comes to life change is like, no, it should be immediately removed. But then here's Paul in 2 Corinthians saying, can you please get this out of my life and this thorn in the flesh? And he says, no, like my grace is sufficient in your weakness. Like, he said, I don't know how either one of you, how vulnerable you want to be, but like, are there those things? Because I think there are people out there that they get really tripped up with asking God for breakthrough, and maybe it is a thorn in the flesh, but they just... they cannot find themselves delivered from it.
I think finding balance between being liked by your congregation for trying to be too funny sometimes. Okay. Sometimes being kind of a smart A, and then
Apple,
yes. And kind of trying to get past that and not become, Dr. Dry Dust, but not just cutting up and doing funny things. And that came out of insecurity.
Oh, really. For sure.
I would say something funny, and I was really clever and really said some clever things and some horrendously stupid things that I thought were clever at the moment. And then,
I've been there.
Ralph, who was on our church staff for a long time and one of the leadership, I would look out and Ralph would be going like this. He'd just head would go like this. And sometimes his head would be down and go like this from what I said.
It's funny because it's real.
It's a maturing thing that was and my wife would say, honey, I can't believe you said that again.
We still say that, Mike.
Yes, I know. Well, it's way better than it's been.
Yeah.
So
I would say those are I have two thorns that I think one directly ties to that. I've always been the class clown, the funny guy, and a lot of it came from insecurity and not knowing who I was. But at the same time, I am naturally like I'm someone who wants to have fun and I like joking and stuff like that. And so very early on, I found that, especially when I was preaching, wherever I lacked knowledge or content or even just discipline, like I didn't take the time to develop something fully, it was way easier for me to toss in a joke
funny story or something.
A story or a joke and talk about it for 10 minutes and then hit one point and be like, thanks for coming out, and feel like I'm Stephen Furtick in here, like I'm leaving like feeling good and stuff. And then it was like, I realized very quickly, like, why aren't the students growing? It's because I'm not pastoring them well. I'm taking their 30-minute time block and just tossing other things at them that aren't God. Yeah. So that was the first thorn, is I had to learn that that is part of me, but it's not like, it can very quickly become something that I abuse. The way, like my humor and my stories and experiences can be something that I toss out there too much, and then they lose their value and they just confuse people and ultimately sometimes even pull them further away from God, because you never know what someone's in there with. And then the second thorn that I would say is probably the biggest one, and just to be honest with everyone listening and with you guys, it's something that I still deal with. And I mentioned it at our staff retreat, but I really have, like, I've had friends and stuff like that in my life that I know love me and care about me, but I have never felt like I fit in. I just feel even before Jesus, I didn't feel like I fit in, and then I got saved and I felt loved, and I definitely had the expectation to feel like I fit in. And now that I'm like immersed in not just ministry, but like church culture, which is a real thing, like the business of church, the behind the scenes and stuff like that, I still struggle to feel like I fit in, like that there's not a mold or a person that I look at and I'm like, they're exactly like me, I have a chance. Like I just still feel like there's something there that's like, I just feel different. And I don't know why that is. It's something I used to run from, and I used to like beat myself over the head with, to think like, oh, because you're different, you know, you'll never get past this spot. Yeah. You'll never make it in Bible college. Yeah. Well, then I shifted my disciplines and focus, and I did. And then it was like, now I feel called to be a pastor. And it's like, well, because you're different, there's no way you'll ever be a pastor. Ended up getting that, like God gave me that opportunity through that, you know? And so I'm learning that like I am different, and that's something that I need to lean into rather than run from, but also like not view in a negative way. Like understanding that I am loved, and I do have people around me that believe in me and support me regardless, and that I don't have to be exactly like somebody else in order to be able to function and make a difference for the kingdom.
Different is how God made you. So
yeah, exactly.
Surrendering to that.
Yes, that's the difficult part.
Difficult.
Yeah, and a little bit what you're talking about there, I spent probably a good chunk of the message yesterday talking about taking thoughts captive and your thought patterns and the things in which, you know, the monastic guide to combating demons and how to like really find victory in that. And I'm curious, because so much of the battle for the heart is won between the ears, like in the mind. Yeah. For someone who is 55 plus and also ministers to a lot of people in our church 55 plus, and then you, Anthony, working with, you know, teenagers, what would you say are some of the primary kind of negative, detrimental thoughts or thinking patterns that each group of people deal with, and perhaps that you minister to them in? Mike, how about you, when people are getting a little bit older in life, they're seasoned?
There's a couple of things. One, they tend to rehearse some of the tragic things in their lives. There are events, the loss of a child or a divorce or a health problem. Those things, they just hang on to them. And so there's that kind of thing. And then the inevitable end of your natural life coming. You know, you're like 60 and it's still a long ways, and you're 70 and that's a lot closer, and you're thinking 10 years from now I'm going to be 80 or I'm going to be in heaven. You don't know. So that's an issue for them. So it's an insecurity of a different kind than a 17-year-old has. And
do you find that people wrestling with those types of thoughts also can find themselves gravitating towards that kind of confusion or frustration? Like, why do I not have more security? Where's Jesus in this? Why have I not experienced change and confidence like I thought I would?
I think that in ministering to that group, it's been really healthy to talk about that. You know, sometimes I'll show a video and it ends up in the video, it's about somebody's death, and it's good for them. They seem to enjoy it. They're like, yeah, I really wasn't talking to my kids about dying, because when I do, they say, well, you're going to live a long time. Well, maybe not. You know, I'm the age that my mom died at or something, or, you know, someone in my family. And so walking through that with them wherever they're at, it's beneficial for me, and it's beneficial for them. And sometimes I just, if I want to open a question with them, I say, how are you guys feeling about your life as it's coming to a close?
Yeah.
And nobody wants to say that, you know, but it is. It's marching in. And so we talk about heaven with a lot more intentionality.
Yeah, I could see regret being a significant like cloud cover over people that age, of like looking back and constantly wondering like, what could have been? Why didn't I? Yeah. Maybe if I would have followed Jesus closer, this wouldn't have happened, and all those types of things. Yeah. Yeah. How about with the teenage realm? Like, what are some of the thinking and thought patterns that they are wrestling with? Yeah,
one, like flip that. Like with you know, 55 plus, the struggle might be constantly looking back, but with teenagers, it's constantly looking forward, to the point where it's not like you're really wanting them to even look back, but you want them to be present. And so many times it's like you're 3 years ahead in your mind. You're missing all these opportunities and people and things that you can do right now where you're at. And so like, especially when it comes to like change, I feel like one of the biggest hurdles is people want to make a difference. Students are like, especially this age, they want to make a difference, regardless if they're, extroverted or introverted. Everyone wants to feel like they look for value in the differences they make. The problem is
that influencer mindset.
Exactly. That's what that's exactly where I was headed. And like, they want to influence, but the majority of them look for ways to influence outside of God. Whereas, like, if you want to influence people, there is no greater way to do it than in the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Like, not only is it the greatest reward, right? But there's something so fulfilling about being part of someone's life change, being part of that journey. And so that's something that students deal with constantly, is they're so introspective at what is it that, like, how can I influence other people, that they're missing out on what's influencing them, or overlooking at what's influencing them and who's influencing them. But then they're like, they get 3 years ahead in their mind, and then when 3 years actually go by, they end up looking back and they're like, well, I didn't really do anything these last 2 years. Or they're like, even the Christians that are at youth group constantly, they wrestle with this thing of, well, I want God to change circumstances, right? Like, they want God to change everything around them, but they don't quite understand the value of God changing me. Yeah. Like, God wants to change you, not just the things around you. And oftentimes when he changes you, no matter how easy or difficult that is, the stuff around you will change, right? And that's what I loved about your message, is that you said that change brings change. Yeah. The ball is in our court the majority of the time. When we're looking around expecting it to just be handed to us, we have to do it. Yeah. And with students, that's a big thing, is like, almost like kicking them in the butt, getting the momentum going, is you have to take initiative. Yeah, in the apple. In the you have to take initiative, though. Right? Exactly. You have to take initiative. Yeah. Opportunities and change doesn't just come to you. It's something that you have to initiate and be on the forefront of in order to experience it.
Yeah. Well, yesterday was exciting because after services, we headed to Playa Pacifica, went to the Bay, and 13 people made decisions to get baptized. Yeah. And I don't know exactly the ages, but I know the spectrum probably ran from about 10 to 65, 70 years old. Yeah. Which is so cool to see. And then awesome. A lot of people in between there too. Which just, one of the things I was trying to share with people is like, it just shows how, one, God will meet you at any point, any stage of life. Yeah. He's never done with you. He's always in pursuit of you. And it's great. Even if you make the decision early or late in life, there's still the opportunity to experience life change through Jesus Christ, right? And so I guess my question would be, of considering those people who got baptized, and one of the things we also said was, hey, baptism, I remember when I got baptized, and the way baptism was initially presented to me felt like this like crescendo moment, like you have arrived, like you get all of your sins in order, you are perfectly holy, and then you get dunked. And you're like, well, I thought the whole like dunking was like washing sins away, but if I got them all washed away already, why do I need to get dunked? And so it was the peak moment versus the kind of the starting moment, and trying to tell people, for a lot of you, this is the start of a journey, and the journey towards becoming more like Jesus and being transformed and changed. So what words of advice would you have to like just thinking of the kind of the various kind of spectrums of life that were represented in baptism yesterday? What are some areas that you would encourage them to pursue change? Perhaps at the early stage of life or towards the late stage of life, and they might think there's not much change left to happen.
I think people that are seeing, most of my group, they're not 55 plus, they're 65 plus, and they're 71 and 75. And there's a lady in our group that's 77 years old. She's a really young believer, but she's 77. So the actuarial tables of insurance say she doesn't have much time left, even in America. But I heard a pastor one time say, if you're still alive, then you're not done. Yeah. Stop discounting. You're not dead, you're not done. And I try to encourage them, when you hear something, try to act on it, and don't be afraid to make a mistake, which is the same thing for younger people. Both groups lack confidence. They're just like, hey, I felt like the Lord said to me this, or I felt like I should tell my friend that, or invite somebody to church, and I was nervous about doing it. I said, when the older ones, I go, what do you got to lose? Someone's going to be mad at you. They won't be mad that long before you're in heaven, kind of that. There's that kind of thing. And then from the youth part is like, what do you got to lose? Everybody thinks you're a knucklehead anyway. You're only 17. You don't know anything. Yeah.
That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah. I think, and this is something that, the leaders and I at Rice City Youth definitely, we preach and put this at the forefront, but I tell students from the time they're in 6th grade to the time they're graduating, even on the day of graduation. Set boundaries now.
Yep.
Don't wait. Like, you don't have to, like,
Matt Heinrichsey would love you if he heard this right now. Like, that is his word.
He's
Boundaries,
the B
boundaries,
word.
boundaries.
Yes.
Yeah,
Boundaries.
But seriously, and like so many people just immediately tie boundaries to purity, which is true, and it's great. But also, like, we just went through a whole series about how to have friends, how to be a good friend. And at the end, like yesterday, we talked about how to be friends with people who are non-believers, how to be friends and interact with people who aren't Christian. And it starts with boundaries. Yeah. You can and you should have people that are not believers in your life and in your sphere of influence, but you have to ask yourself, who's transforming who? And that comes from, what are my boundaries with them? So I tell kids this, and I tell students this, and especially when you get baptized, like, that's the start. You know, that's not the stamp of, like you said, like, okay, you're baptized, you know, congrats, you're 16, you're done for the rest of your life.
We'll see you in heaven.
Like, I just challenged them, as big and as cool as this moment feels for you, imagine seeing five people around you do the same thing, but you're out there watching them. You're screaming and cheering for them out there, and you know that feeling. Like, that's how contagious this is. Yeah. That's what this can be. And the best part is, you can do it at our next baptism. Yeah. You don't have to wait until you're an adult to then be like, okay, now I'm old enough, I'm mature enough, I can make a difference. It doesn't matter how old you are. God will use you if you're available.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the longer you go, the tighter your boundaries become. I mean,
sure.
If you use the analogy of being on the freeway, there's 5 lanes. Your goal is just stay off the ditch, stay off the ice plant. And then as you get, as you add things, you follow prescriptions, you do those spiritual disciplines, your boundaries become tighter and tighter. And it becomes tighter and tighter, your direction becomes more powerful. Yeah. And if you take a big hose and you make it smaller and smaller and smaller, pretty soon you can cut steel with the water. It's great because of its intensity. So that's...
Well, especially in this, like, influence era, like, that's what I always try to tell them is, like, who are you influencing if you're just doing what everyone else is doing? Yeah. Yeah. Like, there's nothing that's not as culturally, like, there's nothing that is farther away from being culturally relevant right now than being a teenager who is passionate about Jesus. Yeah. 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 So if you want to make influence, there's your opportunity. There's your
way right there. Yeah.
And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable for you, but there will be life change. Yeah. Within you and within the people around you. Yeah. So why wait?
Yeah. Well, as we get ready to close, I want to ask one more question. And I kind of, the last 2 points I just kind of breezed through yesterday, but I did say at the end, like, a part of the change mechanisms that God has given us is to practice holy habits habitually. And that these things that God has given us to really kind of move us in the direction of change. Right. And I just thought I'd ask both of you, like, when you consider holy habits that you practice and that you really say, this is a part of my routine, like, just what are the habits that you have that you feel like you experienced the most significant change through consistently that maybe just an encouragement to those listening to try to practicing those very habits?
Right. Number one for me, and this is something that it's definitely a holy habit, and it's varied in different seasons on, like, my consistency level, but Sabbath is big. So, like, wake up on a Friday morning, and it's not just I keep my phone in my pocket on silent, but my phone's off in my closet. I'm not getting on my phone. I'm going to be present with the day, and whether that's we go with family somewhere or I sit around the house bored, I'm not on my phone. I'm not watching TV. I'm separated from that. And the second thing is, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are on this too, but especially my era, my generation, but get a physical Bible. Like, use a pen and write, mark things, underline them, write on the side. Like, it's so easy to just open your phone and look at it and be like, it's so accessible. And, like, yes, that's true.
You got your verse of the day and you're good. And that's
there's something different about when you're, like, you still are so distracted on your phone. And even just the light coming off your phone is a distraction. Yeah. So, like, be away from your phone when you're taking time in the Word. That is probably one of the biggest habits for me that I have to do is sometimes I'll legitimately just toss my phone to the other side because I'm like, I know this is distracting me. I'm not focused here at all. Okay. And so that difference is like, it's the same Bible, but it's a completely different experience when you're taking away those distractions.
Yeah. All right. So Sabbath and Scripture. How about you, Mike?
I think praying and developing your prayer life.
It's great too.
And the part of it that's really important is listening, which means you do have to Sabbath kind of stuff, even on a daily basis, push some stuff out, turn things off.
Make time,
Pray. Jesus, one of the most powerful things he did is he would get away. He would consult the Father, even when he he called Lazarus out of the tomb. He's like, "Oh, time out. Oh, Lord, what do you think? Yeah, should we do this? Yeah, okay, come on forth, Lazarus." You know? And developing that and trusting that, and then the work of the Holy Spirit in your life. All those other things are great disciplines. My wife and I listen to a lot of Christian music, worship music. I put it on when I'm making her breakfast, and a lot of times that sets a tone for us. So setting a tone, creating an atmosphere. One of the things I learned about preaching and controlling a room was setting the atmosphere, how the chairs were done, and how things were put in order, and whether the lights were a certain way. Yeah. And I learned how to do that with a group of people, but then I also learned how to set an atmosphere in our home. And what things to turn off and what things to eliminate, and not let people come in to my house, into my sanctuary, so to speak, and start popping off a bunch of stuff. It's just nonsense. So that discipline of controlling the input in your life, what goes in your ear gate and your eye gate, especially, it's because they affects you. Yeah, that's good. And repenting of it. When you get it, it's like, oh man, I shouldn't. I can remember seeing there's a movie I saw one time, and I saw a whole movie. It was a good movie. It was a war movie. And then there got to be a certain point, and I go, I shouldn't have seen that. That wasn't good for my soul. It wasn't that anything happened in it that was shocking to me. It's just like my soul fed on that, and it took me a while to, get over that. And next time I saw something, I was like, I'm not watching that. It just rang a bell. It's like, that's not good for me. So, so if you want to know the movie, I'll tell you later.
And this may be one, and I'll close with this, like that. I think you can do it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do it with a friend, but I find it to be really helpful of a habit with my wife is just, I invite her, what do you see in me that looks like Jesus? And what do you see in me that doesn't? Yeah. And quickly, those people at least who are closest to you that can honestly speak about you, inviting their feedback without defense and, trying to try to excuse yourself from that. It just opens up ways for even just, I can pray in this direction. I can lean in here. I can withdraw here. And so I think that's just a really helpful question to consider asking the people you're close with, whether you're married or maybe a friend, like, what do you see in me that looks like Jesus? And what do you see in me that does not? Yeah, and those do not. Okay. Then that's another area to keep.
Into my life.
And those are the areas where change is still in process, and Jesus is going to do that in me. But I also need to be intentional to put some effort in that direction as well. Sure. So, I appreciate the conversation. Thanks for jumping in. And like I said, not sure if you are more in Anthony's age demographic, Mike's or mine, but I think there's a lot of stuff that was spoke here that's relevant to all. And we just want to encourage everyone, including just remind ourselves that like Jesus is about changing lives. But that is a lifelong process. Some things get changed immediately, others incrementally. Yeah. But make no mistake, he's a change agent, and and that's why we've given our life to him and our eternity. So next week, the tripping hazard question I think is, how can I trust the Bible? What validity is there? How do I know the Bible's true? How can I trust the Bible? So
it's gonna be a fun one.
That will be the digging deeper conversation next week. Thanks for joining with us, and we'll call it there. That's a wrap.
Amen.